And beyond that, there's also the issue of fatality. You could die in the process, because we know how challenging our healthcare system is in this country. It has not been so fantastic, especially at the primary healthcare level, where we don't even have enough intervention for those people in rural communities where this is deeply entrenched. So you find out that the facilities to even support situations like this are not there. They also find out that even the basics, the knowledge, the information is not there on how people can move on from the point where they have been in severe depression to the point where they are now facing the reality of the actions that was done against them, as probably as teenagers or even as women, because FGM affects both young girls and even women in their adulthood. Because sometimes we find cases where some women, like I mentioned, as a rite of passage or before they get married into a certain family, they have to undergo that circumcision. So these things happen to them as a result of all of these challenges. And a number of them can often find it difficult to move on because of the trauma. So you are going to go through the trauma of childbirth, you go through the trauma of being caught, you also go through the trauma of having severe pains around the area, and these pains are ongoing because of the way that the process or the procedure was carried out on them. So if it's the case of scraping, or if it's the case of, you know, we call it infibulation, whereby there's only just a tiny space for her to urinate and to have a menses, you find out that the pain is an ongoing one, because sometimes as a woman, when you're menstruating, you have situations whereby there are deep or very big clots that need to pass through you, and the pain is severe because of the sewing up.
Now let's even look at the effect that this has on the marital relationship of, you know, a woman who has gone through this in relating with her husband. And of course, we live in an age where there's so much consciousness on the physical appearance of human beings, and this is a lot more tilted towards the woman. What would you say about this? Does this have any effect on? Of course.
FGM is actually supported by some men.
Okay.
So, and I think more out of selfish reasons, because for them, they assume that the tighter a woman is, the more pleasurable sex will be for them. And so a married woman, for example, in a relationship that has gone through the procedure of FGM will certainly not have will I say, an exciting sexual relationship with her spouse. Because at the end of the day, it becomes a burden on her. It also becomes a burden on the relationship. It becomes a burden for her to move on, to take care of her own daughters, because of the fear of the challenges of having to raise daughters in such severe situations. And especially where she has no say in the decision making of the home, it becomes another challenge entirely. And you know how deeply entrenched patriarchy is right here in our society, where a woman's voice is often discarded and not taken seriously. Again, the effects could also be in the form of, just generally moving on with life and trying to have a decent way, living a decent way to live. Most women do not recover from this situation, and oftentimes they tend to, have this level of distrust when they meet or interact with other people, other women, because sometimes these issues are not openly discussed. But when they are talked within closed circles, it becomes
a lot of them opening up.
So we had a case where, for example, a woman in her marriage called our organization and was seeking for help. She had just had a baby. The baby was around 2 years old, and the parents, the mother-in-law, wanted to circumcise the daughter. In this case, the husband was indifferent because his sisters had been circumcised, and he did not consider it a big deal. But the other party, the wife, it was strange to her because she was never circumcised, and they don't believe in that. So it was a challenging situation for her, because she was at a crossroads as to whether to leave the marriage or stay in the marriage and live in fear of what will happen to her daughter. So it basically just affected her lifestyle. She couldn't concentrate at work, and every time that there was a visitor coming to the house that from the other spouse's family, she always had this fear of, are they coming to circumcise my daughter? So it basically just ruined that relationship.
That's just not the way to live.
And that's not the way to live. So it affected her source of income, affected her psyche, and eventually they both had to separate. And so these are issues that we do not discuss all the time, but they are deeply entrenched in our society, and it still happens even amongst the most educated. We find the issue of FGM.
Let's very quickly, let's talk about medicalized FGM, because in some cases people would say, oh, maybe because the locals are the ones carrying out the procedure, but let's take it to a healthcare professional. does that make it, more acceptable because the healthcare professional is the one, carrying out the procedure?
Absolutely not.
And
Charles.
secondly,
Yeah.
is there like a link? Is there an established link between FGM and HIV and AIDS infection?
Okay, so let's quickly take the question of the fact that if it's conducted by a medical professional, does that make it even appropriate? No, the answer is no, absolutely not. I think we should, as much as possible, condemn this totally in its entirety. The fact that a medical professional is the one conducting the FGM doesn't make it right and doesn't make it proper. We could say it makes it safe, but if we're trying to completely eradicate FGM as a whole, why do we give credence to this? I don't think that we should encourage it. And I don't think that we should allow it. I think we should continue to advocate against this practice completely. And in the event that someone could say, okay, well, is it not better than having a medical professional do it, and then have a local woman or a local person somewhere in the community do it? At least the chances of being safe is higher. Yes, we could have that argument, but the truth is this: if something is totally condemned and totally made illegal, as it is in Nigeria,
every shade of it
should be rejected completely. And this also puts the message clearly to those communities that continue to practice FGM that look, this is not allowed, it's actually illegal. And then hopefully with this kind of consistency, there'll probably be a shift in behaviors and attitudes around FGM. And to the second question, where you asked if what is the link between the practice and HIV? The truth is this: there is definitely a very high prevalence of contracting the HIV virus from FGM, especially in societies or in communities where blades, scissors, and equipments are shared. And you know that in such communities, first and foremost, there's some level of poverty in those rural communities. And to save money, to save costs, when this rite of passage is happening for a number of girls at the same time, they definitely will have to share.
Of course, there will be protracted use of
the same tools, and then this becomes a circle. And before you know what's happening, it becomes a problem that that escalates out of proportion. Again, even in marriages, you find in a situation whereby a woman that has gone through FGM is probably having sexual intercourse. The chances of reopening some of these damaged parts of her body, the sexual organ, the cells, the nerves, also increases the chances of contracting STIs and all of that because of exactly. So we must condemn it totally, and we must continue to advocate continuously for the complete eradication of FGM in our society.
Sadly, time flies when we're having fun. Thank you so much, Claire, for being on the show, and I'm sure we will invite you subsequently.
Absolutely. It's been so much pleasure to be here, Charles.
All right, viewers, the show is almost up, but the conversation still continues across our social media platforms. You can connect with us on Instagram at The Well Child Show and at Global Child Health. We have our Facebook page and our YouTube page. You can log on to these platforms to get a lot more resources. And if you have questions or comments, contributions on how we can improve the show, you can send us an email at info.wellchildshow@gmail.com. And let me also use this opportunity to call on well-intentioned individuals and organizations to partner with the Well Child Show, where we bring you information and education that helps to improve the life, health and safety of children. Thank you for being a part of the show today, and always remember, child health and safety is everybody's business. Goodbye.